morning. Unity of Springfield here and also online. My name is John Braucher, and today I'm presenting on adult education and history of religions and new thought here at Unity of Springfield. And today the title is Metaphysics Clarified with Abraham, Emilie, and Eric. And so metaphysics is the study of the fundamental nature of reality. What does that even mean? What does that even mean, the fundamental nature of reality? And that's a quote from Eckhart Tolle, who I love. Here's some hands. Yeah.
Well, the nature of metaphysics is that which I cannot see.
Mm-hmm. It is. So, and it's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke. What does that even mean? When you have something that kind of is bigger than what you can swallow. Well, so metaphysics delves into the underlying principles and assumptions that shape our understanding of the world. That can include spirituality. It's also, more recently, with the advent of quantum theory development, inquired into the underlying nature of the physical world and how we may interact with this outer world, with an awareness that is going on that our senses can only point to. The unseen world, as Jerry mentioned, the spirit. And I think metaphysics the word was first introduced by Aristotle. And he also originally was looking into the physical world and trying to understand it, and realized early on that there was more to it than what the eye can notice. So the three people is Abraham and Esther Hicks. And Esther was born in 1948 and is still living. And Emilie is H. Emilie Cady. She was born in 1848. She was born 100 years before Esther. And she lived until 1941. And Eric Butterworth was born in 1916 and just died in 2003. And they all wrote and spoke up to the practical use in our everyday lives of the underlying principles and the unfolding assumptions informing our understanding of our world and of reality as we know it. The thing about Emilie Cady was that she spoke a lot of what the film wars were presenting in a way that was a lot more easily accessible than what the film wars, because the film wars did not set aside to have a church, and they didn't sent to write books at all. All of their books are really collections of letters to different people that they were in contact with. But they were contemporaries of Emilie, and she wrote a lot, and she was also one of the first teachers and one of the first heads of the school at Unity Village. Eric Butterworth and Emilie also, she was a physician, naturopathic physician. So a lot of her learning about metaphysics kind of came out of working with people and working with people's health in very kind of practical things. And she would give them a prescription, but she would notice that the physical prescription wasn't really what was going on, that there was something else going on. And so she kind of got into metaphysics because Esther Hicks was a chiropractor. And so I think some of the language, the sensibilities of trying to help people with their health too also came in to being with that.
But she a homeopathic healer? Is that
True. Emilie Katie.
Emilie Kate? Yes. Okay. Especially for that time frame.
Yes, but she was considered a physician.
Right.
But it was naturopathic, homeopathic, as opposed to the osteopathic or medical medicine.
Gotcha.
Which they were both. I mean, they were all archaic. And then Eric Butterworth, who was the son of a Unity minister. His mother was a Unity minister. And he first was educated in music and then went into the ministry, served as a chaplain in World War II, and went on to grow some Unity churches throughout our country. And I really like Eric because he's so readable. He speaks in a language that's more accessible than say that or even Emilie Katie, just because of the time frame and the language that they use. But they all shared a lot of the same principles. As I was looking at all of these different ones, and I noticed, God, there's just a lot of overlap. And one of the precursors to all of this is the need to be present in this moment in order to practice. And notice what's going on. So we're going to start off with a meditation on practicing the presence. I'm going to give you a little assignment. This is not something to write down, not a lot of words to memorize, but it's a project of involvement in thinking, meditating, and relating. Remember, the allness refers to totality. The beginning doesn't mean time. It means foundation. In the beginning, allness means right where you are right now. And the most important thing to you, the most important thing about your life and your involvement is that you are a living expression of the allness of the divine potential. And it's constant. The totality of the universe is present where you are. This is a big starting point. The allness of mind, the allness of substance. You may have a desire to make more money, but right now, you rest upon the principle of all sufficient substance. It's like a person talking out of a problem, 2 plus 2. He's going to try and make the 2 plus 2 come out as 4. But the beginning is the principle in which the 4 is immanent, even in the 2 plus 2. When would you put 2 plus 2 on the paper? Before you draw a line, put a plus sign. It already implies 4, you see. This is in the beginning, allness. In the beginning, at the heart and root of your life. The whole process of infinite activity is present as you. The important thing is to take some time, especially at the beginning of the day and as many times during the day as you want, to come back to it. And remember to make a practice of starting all things at the beginning, not in the point of time, but at the foundation, the realization, that awareness that you are. So let's be still. Let's just get the feeling that what we've just talked about. We've empowered words, 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 words. Words really are meaningless except that they direct us. to consciousness. See it. Awareness. Let it all go. Let the creative process come into a living experience right here where you are. Think about the first words of the Bible. In the beginning, God. We're simply saying, in the beginning, allness. At the foundation of you, your life, your experience is the wholeness of the universal process expressing itself as you. Just thinking of yourself for a moment as being the central point of focus of light. Light is in sharp focus, and you never lose it. You are a point of light in the infinite light of God. You are an expression of love in the limitless love of the infinite. You are an experience of wholeness and health and activity of the allness of healing life. You are a flow of substance within all sufficiency of infinite supply. And this flowing force through you, as you. And it feels good. Don't let yourself wonder how. Don't question who made that. Don't think in terms of what was there before. There was nothing. Let all of these human thoughts go. Just feel your oneness with the allness of the infinite. In the beginning, allness. Remember, wherever you are, the allness of God is present. And the allness of God is present because you are present. You are always and in all ways in eachness within the allness that is God. Okay, so the next step is sharing a little bit about some of the underlying principles and assumptions by these masters of metaphysics. From Emilie Cady, there is but one power in the universe, and that is God the Good. There is no evil. And what I'm borrowing from are her denials and affirmations. And embedded in them are some of these principles and assumptions. There's no evil, there's no absence of life, substance, or intelligence anywhere. God is life, love, intelligence, substance, omnipotence, and omnipresence. I am a child or a manifestation of God, and every moment his life, love, wisdom, and power flow into and through me. Eric Butterworth goes on to say, God is an allness in which I exist as an eachness. We are expressions of God. I am. I am edge, image. We're in the image of God. Metaphysics is not to be studied, but practiced. That's why I love these two, Don and Brenda, so much, because they walk the talk and share. internal and external language can exert great power. God is centered in you. And then some of the Abraham and Esther Hicks, you are vibrational extensions of the non-physical. Thought attracts vibrational matches, and that if held long or repeated often enough, lead to manifestation. Whether we're doing it intentionally or not. Letting go or allowing is integral in allowing God or Source to work through us. And you are an eternal creative being that operates within the law of attraction. And these really together fit into the unity principles of God is, I am, I think, I pray, and I act. So it's all fits together. There's not really any contradiction. Yeah. Sure.
I love the unity of the five principles, but I see it a little different from the perspective of allness.
Mm-hmm.
And so the process of practice is, first I have to know God is. I have to have something I believe in. Then I have to understand my relationship to that. In some way, I am. This is who I am in relationship to that. And then I ask is just part of being a human being and being here and witnessing things and saying, I don't even have to ask with my words. And for me, the I pray is I go into the state of being that which I asked for. And then the action isn't something that I take from that. It is the natural result of that, which then brings me back to God is. I come back and stay clear in that awareness. And that's the creative process.
And often that action is more of an allowance.
Yeah.
The specific books that I used in this was the complete works of Emilie Cady, which includes Lessons in Truth, which was kind of the landmark book that she did. Practical Metaphysics by Eric Butterworth, and The Amazing Power of Deliberate Intent by Esther and Jerry. The meditations we're doing, the two meditations we'll do today, are out of the Practical Metaphysics, A New Insight and Truth by Eric Butterworth. Especially for those that are at home, want to go ahead and follow up and look into that. So, meditation, second meditation, is let something good be said. Let's be still just a moment. And let's get this whole thing back into a true spiritual context. All things begin with the basic one, the creative logos. It's not just that we like to say to ourselves that we're spiritual beings, but we like to remember at the ground of our being that each of us is spirit being us. This is always true whether we know it or not, whether we articulate it or not. When we listen before we express ourselves, we listen to this vibrational pattern of the universe. Which is expressing itself, articulating itself as us. Dynamic, wonderful, powerful, beautiful, fulfilling, and loveful. You are a dynamic spiritual being. This is the basic identity in the universe. This is your basic identity in the universe. Make the commitment now that you're going to allow this to be the ground, the foundation, the underpinning of all that you think and feel and articulate in times ahead. You're going to keep coming back to this. All things come out of the basic one and are resolvable back into it. One at the root of our being. And this is part of the Pythagorean system. And it's a vital realization that all positive, powerful things come out of this basic one at the root of our being. We begin with this, to listen to this consciousness before we go to work, before we face people, before we get involved in any kind of relationship. We remember who we are, and then we allow this consciousness to be embodied. As Emerson says, man is an inlet and may become an outlet to all there is in God. The outlet is the cutting edge of our spoken words. We project this spoken word in positive power, and the words I speak are not my words, but the words of him who sent me. I allow them to flow forth through me in faith and creativity. Let's project ourselves in imagination. See ourselves going forth from this place, doing a little normal confrontation that we have. Let's do such things as buying subway tokens, talking to cab drivers, ordering food in restaurants, talking to people, or conversing around the water cooler. See ourselves through mental imagination as projecting positive power, as keeping a seal on our lips and saying only those things that are positive and creative. Say them in a loving, harmonious way, and we'll say, let something good be said. Let it be said positively. Let it be said lovingly. Let it be said with animation. Let it be said in a way that truly represents us in fullness, in a powerful. In this sense, we go forth, committing ourselves to the practice of fundamental metaphysical principles in a very simple way. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And into the silence. So now we're going to talk a little bit about practice. In improving our awareness of the oneness with God, which we've tried with both the meditations we're speaking of that, because that's where we're positioned to move forward in practice. When we're out of touch with that vibrational match with that higher self, it's more difficult. So, how can we most quickly and surely attain this conscious oneness with the Father, which will enable us to see things as He sees them, all good, that it's really perfect, just as it is? I remember the first time I heard that. No, mate. Yes.
By living in the moment and every moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a practice in and of itself.
Doing your best to remember all of this.
Well, actually, you don't. The only thing you have to remember is to come back.
Yeah.
Seek the light from the interior, not from external sources.
There you go.
And all of these authors said, you can read too many books and get way off base.
For sure.
And it's more important than rather than to intellectually understand it, is to be connected. And that's where the understanding. Yes.
I absolutely believe what you just said. I absolutely believe it, but I know there's a time in the process of this that gaining more information about possibility, when you're raised in a certain way, that this is how the world works. This is how the world works. It took a lot for me of reading other people's ideas and getting ideas. I remember I was in a 12-step meeting, and at the beginning of the meeting, the girl told her story, and then she said, what would it look like if your God was, what would your God look like if your God was just loving and good and cared about you and everything? Until someone said that to me, I didn't even have a clue that you could even think about God that way. God was just, don't ever turn your back on him. So there's a time for getting new information.
Absolutely.
And then using it.
Absolutely.
I really liked what Butterworth was quoted as saying earlier, that internal and external language can exert great power. Much as I truly, truly love Esther and Jerry and Abraham, she says repeatedly, words don't teach, and suggests that words don't matter, and yet they have a whole string of words to explain some principles, and words are extremely meaningful to me. And John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word.
Mm-hmm.
The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Your explanation of the beginning, that really opened that up for me, because foundation instead of time, that just really clicked for me. And I also think, just as an aside, that's where we have kind of a schism with other faith communities, because I think they believe the Bible was there in the beginning. This Word of God was there in the beginning, instead of wholeness, logic, logos, right? Which is what logos was, the word that was used in that chapter. But this idea of everything being whole and us being part of the whole and being able to return to the wholeness, that's so beautiful to me. And words got me there, sorry.
You don't have to apologize.
So how do we do that? We each have our own journey of letting go of false assumptions as we identify. And obviously that investigation, some of the intellectual, the reading and the intellectual, because we are intellectual as part of our beingness as humans in this three-dimensional. It's just that that's not what all is. And the other part is that our intellect can help us point, but it's not going to be. There's a difference between
Like a road sign.
an idea, yeah, it's like a road, and then it's a little more, there's a difference between an idea and beingness. And it's, Eckhart Tolle talks about that, he doesn't want, as a speaker, as a teacher, he doesn't want people to follow him, because he's just pointing towards what other masters and other people have taught, have pointed to, and doesn't want to create a new belief system just based on the information that you're receiving. really to help us point towards that higher self, that oneness that is the source.
The other things, each one of us is different, and we have a different idea of words. I know when I was in college and I had a teacher at the beginning of the class said, the most important thing that we need to do is respect people. And I went home that weekend and I was like, I'm dropping this class. You know, it was the class freshman seminar. It was the class supposed to teach you how. I'm dropping this class. This teacher's crazy. She doesn't know anything. So I didn't just stop there, and I looked at definitions of it. I looked at everything. So when we went back the next time, I raised my hand and I said, I have a question here. How many people in this room of 30-odd people have a problem with her saying that? Everyone raised their hand. And I said, because in my experience, you will respect me. That's what respect means. So each one of us has a different idea. You do meditation. It doesn't do any good for me to meditate. I go inside, I'm silent, and the voices get louder. So I sew. I meditate when I sew or wash dishes. Mm-hmm. So we each have our own way of practicing.
Right. Isn't that known as yoga? Doing different. Isn't that known as yoga when you're doing different practices, and it leads to kind of a metaphysical or a mindful experience, like you're sewing or.
Sure, right. Sure. I mean, there's walking meditation. There's whatever works. Yeah. And so we have our own journey. Affirmations, denials, meditation, breathing practice, sewing, being in the current moment, after moment, until they no longer are required to follow some seeming laws of the space-time continuum. An attitude of compassion, self-compassion is certainly helpful. Noticing synchronicity is a helpful skill. Neuroscience informs us that repeating an intentional behavior and thought that is at least mildly pleasurable or reinforcing can help create new habits that we actually want. So that's kind of a practical little piece that kind of can be very helpful. If you find something that matches, that's a vibrational match to what you want, that you kind of enjoy, and that's a lot of what, the Abraham Hicks whole idea is that as you find that, and it's moving more towards to what you want to fulfill, what you want to emanate, it doesn't have to be hard all the time. Although sometimes it's during an intense crisis, near-death experiences, times of great fear, that we stop. We stop, and the clatter in our internal dialogue stops. We see what previously we weren't able to see. But we don't have to do that to get the same result. So the next thing on this handout, and those online can find this if they just look up Abraham Hicks Emotional Guidance Scale. And this is a tool with number 1 being joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, and appreciation. And the bottom being fear, grief, depression, despair, and powerlessness. And then the other 21 or the other 20 are in between there. And one of the reasons, is that Abraham Hicks wrote those out for us is because most of the time we don't have Saul turning into Paul, kind of change. It's just instantaneous from being a total jerk to being, one with God, and it's very that's not always attainable and easily attainable. It's more likely that in everyday life we're able to move to something close to where we are. And the whole key really is to be in acceptance with where you are right now. Because it is what it is, it is. So to fight against it is totally unhelpful and won't get us anywhere. And if we really don't want to live it tomorrow, we must accept it now, so that we can take a step beyond it. But we can only do that when we fully accept the situation we're in, our part of it in it, and just that it is what it is, and that it's part of this beginning point. It's perfect just as it is, even if it sucks. Yes.
I think it's important too to realize that when you get in those places, that you actually feel yourself there, not just think yourself in there.
Right.
And then Abraham says, you don't move up the scale all at the same boom, 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 and you're up at the top. They say it takes time to move up the scale and to give yourself a break.
Correct. And this is an emotional guidance system. So all of these lists are emotions. So yes, inherently you have to be in touch with the feeling, the vibrational feeling that you're experiencing in this moment. Yes.
I think there's a bit of a hack for this. If you can get yourself to number 6, hope, and almost anybody can daydream and hope a little bit, then you are right up that scale, even if you're furious or devastated. You can kind of, it works for me to get to the place where I'm envisioning something great.
So what neuroscience will say about that is it really depends on the groove that you've cut. How much time and how deep is the groove that you're in right now? So if you're in a pretty deep canyon, then it's really important to use the step by step coming on up. If you're coming up a steep, of a grade, and yes, I think you're correct. Once you do get to where hope is there, that it's
It's a pretty long way up the list.
it's less painful.
It's engaging the imagination, I think.
Sure.
For the next step.
And again, going back to just basics in it, being here as creative beings that have the power of focus and intention and focus, that's where our power is. So why we accept what is now is because once I accept it, then I'm not going to be giving my attention to trying to fix it or change it or do anything about it. So I'm putting my focus on what I want instead of what I've already created. Then I can create what I want. As long as I'm focused on what I already created, then that's all I'm going to do is create more.
Yeah, more of the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I have found, even though I have never had one, that NDE experiences, if you get into reading them, and the changes that actually went on in their lives, NDE, near-death experiences, the changes that go on in their lives will just completely astound you, because it's like one moment they're killing people in the streets, the next moment they're trying to save them. It just goes on and on. I love NDEs. I love to read them. I don't want one.
Careful what you resist.
Careful, yeah, right. That's what I was going to say. Actually, right there is I have found in my spiritual process that the key comes back always back around to what you're not to a not doing, not doing, just being. It's not doing for human beings. And the more I let go of the judgment and criticism, so like the Buddhists would say, no attachments or aversions. When you can, Michael Singer puts things in ways that I really get it. He talks about, you went in to have an operation and they somehow messed up the paperwork. They cut off your arms, maybe they cut off your legs, and they cut off you're like maybe a head that's left or whatever. He's like, so who are you? What are you that's still there, that still exists? When it kind of. So anyway, as I get more in touch with the acceptance of myself and everything else, I can even have my animal nature that has the deepest freaking groove that I've been working, that's like, and you can catch it and be aware of it. And go, oh my God, I'm so mad at this person. I want to poke their eyeballs out. And now I'm seeing that, and I'm going to take a breath, and you can, find your way to stuff. But I had a friend who said once, he said, Tamara, there's only love and fear. It boils down to. So if I find that free will to me kind of means our attention. Like we interact with vortexes of energetic, vibratory fields, light, whatever. If you can remain fluid enough in the moment while also using so our attention is what we have to interact with and influence. The attention, but I think if you attend to something, it doesn't mean for me the big trick is you all know me, talk, think, so much mental, and letting that shoveling that or letting that fall off and becoming being, not the thinking self. And that the ego thinking self, we gave it the job to protect us and help for all of our life, and then we come to this place where we're like, oh, shut up and go away,
That reminds me of an Eckhart Tolle little piece of one of his talks, where he talks about paying attention, and that if he has this table, and it's not his table, and it's not, even though he owns it, it's not. You don't look at it in relationship to yourself. You just, whatever it is you're attending to, you're just, what's the essence of what you're observing, of what you're focusing on, without, and letting go. The letting go part is letting go of the chatter. And just truly seeing something just as it is.
And letting go of the history that made you who you are.
The preconceived notions, as often Abraham Hicks talks to, is the false assumptions that we carry with us that we need to let go.
Part of how I look at it is we are the writer of our story, but we are also the main character of our story in our story. And it's fun to play in the story and be the character. But if I want to change the story, I have to go back to the writer and become the writer again for a few minutes and get out of the story that I've already written so I can put something new in it.
There you go. Jerry?
Well, I don't need the microphone.
Well, the people online can't hear it.
I'm loud. But the people online can't hear without. Sorry. Yeah, gotcha. Would you define, or would you be willing to define essence
Ooh, that's a good.
Whoa.
So it's because we are three-dimensional folks, it's using whatever senses we have, but there are more than five senses by far. And it's just that focusing our awareness, our sense on, and that's what we are able to observe, this essence. It's without description. Okay, because description infers that you have to have words to describe it. And you have to, but it's just what it is. When you first see something, before you start thinking about it, that's the essence. It's just the isness.
It's the watcher. It's the watcher. When you strip everything away, it's the watcher. And Sonia Choquette talks about taming the barking dog. When you want to connect with something, with anything beyond the five senses, and you go into trying to get into the stillness to receive something from beyond the five senses, your barking dog, and she actually names hers, I can't remember the name of her dog, but you just have to tell it, you have to still your barking dog, and you say, right now is not the time that you get to put input. Now, if I'm going to go get on the subway, I might need the information from the barking dog to be able to function to do that. But when you're trying to get in touch with a situation, you just have to tell the barking dog to just be quiet so that you can get in touch with that, with the watcher. And in the Four Agreements, Louise talks about our domestication, and that word really made me think from a different perspective, because he says that when we're born, we're like a wild thing, and we can follow, we know, our instincts lead us and guide us. But in the process of educating us, we're domesticated, and we're domesticated by the culture that we live in, which is why there's so much conflict in the world, because there's so many forms of domestication. And when you're domesticated to believe these are the rules of the society, then you think everybody else's rules aren't valid. And so what he says is you have to eliminate the domestication and go back to being the wild creature that we were, because that is the being that lives in the sixth sense world and follows their inner ding, as Louise Hay would say. You follow that inner guidance and you tame the barking dog.
I would say thanks, LP. Another way of looking at it is also ether or spirit, essences. Okay, so again, Abraham Hicks talks a lot about the vibrational relativity and energy balance. The vibrational relationship between you and your source is the basis of your emotional guidance system. And the relationship between where you are and where you want to be is the basis of your personal guidance system. That's what that difference in there is what creates the emotional vibration that you can sense. The contrast, which that's what they call that contrast, which is that difference between what you are currently experiencing and what you want to experience. And the contrast in which you are focused provides a wonderful basis for your launching of your unique desires. For whenever you are experiencing something that you do not want, you always understand more clearly what it is that you do want. In the moment your rockets of desire emanate from you, source energy becomes one with those desires. In fact, that is precisely the reason that we continue to unequivocally state that when you ask, it is always given. For the source energy acknowledges your desire, agrees with your desire, knows your desire, and flows from your desire. That also, the ask and you can receive, is in all three of these books. In spades. They all acknowledge that that is a key to the whole principles of metaphysics. Yes.
I believe we can ask for anything, so I don't think that we have to figure out what God wants from us and we can have anything. However, sometimes our belief systems and perceptions about things get in the way of allowing our desire, because truly the desire, so say I say, I want to marry Sean Connery. Okay, say if I said, and that's what I want. I say, okay, that's what I want. I want to marry that person.
She's still alive?
No, but I'm saying, I'm just saying, if I said I want it could be the man next door. But what I'm asking for is a loving monogamous relationship with someone who will share the spiritual journey. And if the man next door is not that person, the universe is going to have to help me to maybe make another choice, not because it's not okay to choose the man next door, but he's not monogamous and he doesn't like spirituality, and so he's really not fitting what you really want. And that's why it doesn't always seem so cut and dry.
That's why Sue always used to say, what I want or something better. The universe has always got some.
A little wisdom from neuroscience. There's an author, James Kimmel Jr., who writes about the science of revenge and how damaging that is. It's like an addiction. The brain processes revenge the same way. And the solution, the methadone for this addiction is to imagine forgiveness. Even if you don't want to try to forgive somebody, you just have to imagine what it would be like to forgive. This suggests to me that we don't have to formulate a perfect ideal of what we want. We just have to.
That's a serotonin balancing off the dopamine.
You just have to imagine a different reality.
Yeah. So, finding alignment with your source energy, the eternal you is focused here in this physical body. Your inner being does not think for you. You are free to choose the direction of your own thoughts. Your desires are simply waiting for your vibrational alignment with them. And now you must feel your way to that alignment. As you focus on your subject of desire, you can feel your harmony or discord. The better you feel, the more in alignment you are with your desire. Your current emotions indicate your current beliefs in the relationship with your current desire. Increased attention enhances this emotional intensity. So as you're going through that process, using then this emotional guidance system, as you can kind of pinpoint where are you on your journey toward manifestation. So if you're lower down on the list, then that's just where you are. And that's okay. It's perfect just the way it is, because that's where you are. And then, where do you want to go? Do you want to get closer to what it is that you want? Then look for something that's closer to the manifestation, which it comes up at the lower numbers, at the top numbers. So that's kind of the tool. So we're going to use a specific situation that's kind of current eventy. So this is the citizens' freedom situation that was in this book, which was copyrighted in 2006.
By who?
Esther and Jerry.
Okay.
So it was in 2006, but it kind of reminds me of just 2 weekends ago. So it feels like our personal freedoms are rapidly eroding. Our government seems to have gone crazy using its strong-arm tactics under the guise of serving the greater good. What about my good? What about the good of those like me? They've gone crazy. I know this wasn't what our founding fathers had in mind. They're probably rolling over in their graves. I feel disappointment, I feel blame, I feel anger, I feel insecurity, I feel grief, I feel powerlessness. Now let us develop the intentional thought that feels better and towards the reality of what you really do want. Try thoughts close to the above thoughts in feeling, and try thoughts very different from those, moving up towards more positive feelings. This process can be used as long as one is in the current moment, with the ability to separate one's thought with more permanent reality. In other words, don't assume that what it is you're experiencing is not changeable, is somehow in concrete, because it is. Because the only constant is that stuff changes. So be open to it. Be open to the change that you can be a part of. So we want to choose and align with source energy to co-create more in tune with our desires.
Well, it's just like
So
last weekend was Pride Weekend,
yes,
and a lot of this information and a lot of people, and I've been watching other Unity churches' messages, and me being a transgender person, and there's the message is there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just fine the way I am, and I don't need to be fixed.
right. There you go.
Neither does anybody else.
Right.
And,
So,
and neither does anybody else.
so the examples, they're going to give some, I'm going to give you some examples of ones on the low end of the continuum. And then I'd like you to think about how you can move your own thinking up the scale. So it starts off with, how in the world did we ever get to this place where these people in government are in power? That's powerlessness. I can't imagine what possible rationale they have for their ridiculous actions. Again, powerlessness. I don't understand why there isn't a tremendous public outcry. Despair. It's truly frightening when people who clearly lack the ability to see the big picture have power. Insecurity. How is it possible that anyone could be so blind or inconsiderate about the lives of humans around the world? Rage. How can they do what they do and live with themselves? Rage. I hope they wake up one day and fully aware of the damage they're causing. Revenge. I wish they could experience suffering in their own lives. Revenge. When someone is informed and tries to make a difference, they're eliminated. Anger. No one is willing or capable of stepping up and doing what's right. Discouragement. The attitude of corruption permeates and saturates our whole political system. Blame. We don't see who they are until it's too late. Worry. They're not true to their word. Disappointment. It's a tangled mess that seems impossible to unravel. Overwhelmed.
You skipped out.
Where's the public outcry? Frustration. People are uninformed or complacent, or they just don't care. Pessimism. However, I'm not personally impacted in them in any great way. contentment. Okay, so that is the first one of, that's an example of a change from the all the negativity. So I invite you to think of a couple. We're almost out of time, but if anybody has some thoughts of what they do to feel good and move towards manifesting love on the political arena.
One of the things that Avatar teaches is you have to feel your way to the next place.
Correct.
You just can't change your mind and say something different. You have to actually feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're actually feeling it, it might take a little longer than what you just did to get up the scale.
Oh, yes, that just happened to be on the page there.
And sometimes you go through stuff, you know, like you might start crying for no good reason, or you might, but you gotta let yourself feel it and go through it. And what may happen? Oh my God, that reminds me of what my dad did when I was a little kid. Oh my God, am I still operating on that place? Oh my God, you know, and then it kind of loosens up.
Right. Like revenge is above despair. So at least in the anger, you have more energy.
So this week I was at Walmart. There was a car with 3 black guys, one white girl. They got out. One of the black guys put his arm around the white girl. They're walking in. Carload of other guys drives by, says something derogatory. The boyfriend says something derogatory about we can do what we want to your white women type stuff. Escalated. When I first saw them, I thought, what a lovely couple. So I get in, and my normal thing is I don't confront, well, and I don't do that, but I couldn't come to a peaceful place because I'm listening to my emotions, and I kept getting that it was something for me to do, something to say. So I kept going through. I used that process. If I said this, how did that feel? If I said that, and I finally reached a place where I went up to those young men and I said, you know, my biracial nieces and nephews and grandchildren and great-grandchildren need to live in this world you're creating. Please think before you say something. And he said, thank you. And I saw them later and they waved at me and smiled.
There you go. That's perfect. You know, well, you're a very practiced metaphysician, so
Well, and also when you're in an area or you're in a particular situation, sometimes you just gotta step out.
yes. And it's past time, so we're do we have the announcement? Oh,
I think so.
I don't see them.
I don't see them.
No, I don't see the basket or the announcement. So we will go ahead and close for now, and we'll circle up in the back.
So if they want the announcements, they want to watch the end of church.
You better watch the end of church. All right.
Lots of good stuff happening. Bye.